Well, the pound-for-pound king in the sport of boxing, Terence Crawford, gave his reaction to David Benavidez, the Mexican monster, climbing up the pound-for-pound list by defeating David Morrell after defeating Alexander Volstik, Demetrius Andrade, Caleb Plant, Anthony Durrell, and other good contenders. The Mexican monster, David Benavidez, is becoming the fighter that Canelo Alvarez should have had been. At the moment in time, David Benavidez has already surpassed Canelo Alvarez. That's right, there isn't a win on Canelo's career, on his record, that's more impressive than Benavidez beating David Morrell. And even Demetrius Andrade. For the people that don't know, Canelo ducked Boo Boo for an entire decade. Not just that, he also avoided him for undisputed at middleweight. He passed on that opportunity because he wanted no parts of Andrade, after Canelo stated his dream was to become the first middleweight undisputed champion of all time. However, he didn't want to fight Andrade to do so. That's how much he feared Andrade. But guess who didn't? The Mexican monster, Benavidez. He didn't just beat Andrade, he also beat David Morrell. And I'll be the first one to admit, I'm actually the first one that picked Andrade and David Morrell to beat Benavidez. So the fact that Benavidez proved me wrong, and everyone that thought the same thing, by not just fighting Morrell and Andrade, two boogeymans, but defeating them impressively at the same time. Like I said before, there isn't a win on Canelo's entire resume, his whole career, that's more impressive than Benavidez beating David Morrell. And even Demetrius Andrade, same guy Canelo avoided. I challenge all of the Canelo Alvarez fans to name a win on Canelo Alvarez's career that's impressive as either the Morrell or the Andrade fight. Every time Canelo stepped up in competition, he either lost like he did to Floyd and Bivol, or people felt he lost. The fight was so close that it could have had to win either way. The way it did with Triple G when Canelo tested positive for steroid and still ended up with a draw. Or against Lara, where a lot of people felt Lara won 8-4, and that fight was a clear robbery. That's why David Benavidez actually turned out to be the fighter Canelo Alvarez should have had been. It ain't none of that, I don't want to fight Mexicans, I don't want to fight my people, I don't want to fight the best black fighters, I don't want to fight any good fighter that I feel could beat me. Benavidez wants all of the smoke. A lot of people felt it was dumb on Benavidez's behalf to fight Morrell. That was a huge gamble because, truth be told, Benavidez could have had avoided Morrell. He could have had ignored Andrade. But he actually went after these guys and didn't just fight them, but beat them. That was highly impressive. To see the same guys Canelo was running from, both Morrell and Demetrius Andrade, Canelo wanted no parts of them. He was ducking them. However, Benavidez, he saved the day like Superman. He put Mexico on the map. He put respect on Mexico, or I should say, he restored respect on the Mexican name after Canelo shitted on it or put dirt on it. Way he was ducking, or I should say, he put feather ducks on it. Well, it ain't no more of that. Benavidez is a real throwback, old school Mexican fighter. He's bringing that spirit back of wanting to find out if you are really truly the best fighter in the world. At this point, Benavidez doesn't even need Canelo anymore. Benavidez's buzz is way more than Canelo because people are fed up of Canelo ducking, dodging, and cherry picking. He's lucky he's fighting Crawford because that really saved the day or saved this year for Canelo. Speaking of Crawford, he gave his reaction to Benavidez getting dropped in the 11th round when he tripped by saying, "Whoa, that was a good fight." Indeed it was. But it would have had been a great fight if Morrell was on his P's and Q's. However, you got to give Benavidez credit where credit is due. Even though I picked Morrell to win, I was surprised at multiple things. The first thing, in the first round, I automatically knew Morrell was going to lose watching the first round. When I saw Benavidez close the gap on Morrell, and Morrell just stood flat-footed. He wasn't using his footwork, circling Benavidez or any of that. Stood his ground, went to the high guard, allowing Benavidez to close the gap. And when Benavidez went to the inside, he had options. He could hit Morrell with a left hook to the head or the body, a right hook to the head or the body, uppercuts, overhand hooks. I mean, he could hit Morrell at that distance with everything in the kitchen sink. I was under the impression Morrell was going to control the distance and not allow Benavidez to get close to him or to punching range, since he had the longer reach. Plus, he had the footwork. So I assumed he's going to use his lateral movement to walk Benavidez to shots instead of standing in front of Benavidez. And that's the one thing he should have had never done. You do not allow someone to close the gap and come to a punching distance without at least making them work for it if you don't make them pay. There should have had been 5 lines of defense that Benavidez had to get across before getting to Morrell. That should have had been his footwork first, upper body movement second or third, hand control with his lead hand, fourthly, deflecting shots, and lastly, blocking. You don't go straight to blocking with the high guard, allowing Benavidez to close the gap without doing all of that. And the moment I saw Morrell wasn't doing any of that and allowed Benavidez to close the gap, I automatically knew Benavidez was going to win the fight. Remember, it ain't like Morrell has shorter reach and he's the shorter fighter for him to just stand there and allow Benavidez to close the gap on him. He's the one with more reach. He's the one that has longer arms. He's the one that's a little bit taller. He's supposed to be the boxer, the slick fighter. He's the one with the footwork, not Benavidez. Even then, Benavidez was the one who was stepping back, making Morrell miss. At that point, I thought Morrell was going to make the adjustment of feinting, making Benavidez step back for no reason to read his movement. And then after that, perhaps follow up with jabs the next time he does that, or with a 1-2, even if Morrell doesn't follow up with anything. At the very least, Benavidez is burning his energy, stepping back for no reason, and you got to read his movement. You got to read what he's going to do and how he's going to react to the jab or the feint. And you can set him up next time for something. So seeing Morrell not make certain adjustments, and it was Benavidez that was making the adjustments. It was Benavidez with the better defense. It was Benavidez who was countering Morrell. That was impressive to see Benavidez do all that. But that also had something to do with what Morrell wasn't doing. And then surprisingly, in the later rounds, that's when Morrell came on strong. He started letting his hands go. Instead of waiting on Benavidez, he started leading and connecting more often. The main difference between when Morrell was leading and when Benavidez was leading is that Benavidez will set up his offense. He will blind Morrell with the lead hand or the jab. However, Morrell wasn't doing that. He will just randomly throw a leading hook to the body and things of that sort. You can't do that at this level. You have to disguise your offense, and Morrell wasn't doing that. It was supposed to be Morrell winning the early rounds and Benavidez winning the later rounds. But it was the other way around. It was Benavidez winning majority of the entire fight, really. But in the early rounds especially, Benavidez basically was winning easily. However, in the later rounds, that's when Morrell started having success. He showed heart. He showed that he has a warrior spirit. But he has to fight with more IQ. That's the main adjustment Morrell has to make moving forward. Morrell was able to take Benavidez shots well, but the problem he ran into is the main difference that separates Terence Bud Crawford and David Morrell or Jaron Ennis. For example, all of these fighters that I just named are hella gifted. They are hella athletic. They can do nearly anything in any sport almost. However, what separates them is the IQ, the coordination of their technique mixed with their IQ. Obviously, Crawford has better defense and more hand speed and more power as well. But the main thing that separates Crawford and Jaron Ennis along with Morrell is the IQ. Yeah, Benavidez has faster hands, but Morrell had faster feet. Benavidez, he could throw a lot of punches. Morrell, on the other hand, he has more power and longer arms. But the main thing that separates them two is Benavidez's IQ. He was able to outsmart Morrell and beat him to the punch. He beat him to the punch, and he beat him by putting himself in a better position. David Benavidez fought intelligently. Morrell, on the other hand, I'm not sure what was his game plan. However, you got to give credit to Benavidez for making Morrell fight that way. With that being said, go ahead and drop your thoughts in the comment section below. Subscribe below. And to be continued on the next episode of Akhi, Akhi TV. Peace out. Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.